Imagine committing the absolute highest form of treason, like the worst possible crime against the state.
Right, high treason.
Yeah. You are standing in front of the supreme ruler of the known world, and you are completely guilty.
No defense attorney is getting you out of this one.
No, not at all. You are just waiting for the executioner's blade to fall. You know you deserve it. The legal system demands it, right?
Yeah.
But instead of the guards drawing their swords, the ruler, he just casually hands you the keys to his private royal transport and invites you to a banquet.
Which makes zero logical sense.
Zero. And yet, welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today, we are taking a deep dive into 3 short verses in the book of Genesis, specifically chapter 45, verses 21 through 23.
Yeah. And the mission of this deep dive is to extract the massive theological weight hiding inside what seems like, honestly, a pretty standard, boring list of logistical supplies.
Right, because we are talking about an inventory of carts, clothes, donkeys, and bread.
Which does not sound thrilling on the surface.
No, it really doesn't. But I want you, the listener, to imagine yourself in this scenario. We are framing this text not as dry ancient history, but as a striking answer to a terrifying question.
And that question is, what happens when guilty rebels stand before an omnipotent, holy sovereign?
Yeah, do they get retributive justice or do they get unearned grace?
Right.
We are going to examine how God actually commandeers the staggering wealth of a pagan superpower to protect his chosen people.
Well, to grasp the absolute shock of the supplies listed in these 3 verses, we first have to understand the sheer desperation of the context.
Right, because things were really bad.
Oh, incredibly bad.
Yeah.
We have to look at the predicament that brings these men to this specific moment in time. A catastrophic famine has hit the entire ancient Near East.
And this isn't just like a mild drought.
No, this is not a single bad harvest season where people just have to tighten their belts, eat a little less. This is an existential threat to the promised seed of Abraham. You have the family of Jacob living in the parched, rocky hills of Canaan, and they are completely out of food.
The skies have been silent for years, right?
Yeah, the ground is dry and cracked, the livestock are dying. I mean, if this family starves, the covenant line that leads to the Messiah is cut off entirely.
So the stakes are literally the salvation of the world.
Precisely. And that famine forces the brothers of Joseph to travel down into Egypt, which functioned as the centralized, abundant storehouse of the ancient world.
But here's the massive historical problem. These brothers are now standing in the marble halls of Egyptian authority, facing the man they destroyed.
Yeah, the text forces us to look back at the background of these brothers.
Right. We are not talking about innocent victims of a natural disaster who just need a little bit of humanitarian aid.
Not even close. I mean, these men had previously plotted cold-blooded murder against their own brother, Joseph.
They conspired against him.
They threw him into a pit. They sat down to eat a meal while he screamed for mercy.
Which is just chilling, by the way.
It really is. And then they sold him into foreign slavery for 20 pieces of silver. They completely sold out the beloved son.
So by every human standard of morality, they are monsters.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, years later, by a stunning twist of divine providence, that same brother is the second highest ruler in the Egyptian empire.
And they don't realize it's him at first, right?
No, they are clueless. But the reality remains they are standing before the man they betrayed, guilty of the highest treason imaginable.
If I'm reading this as an ancient Near Eastern legal document, the punishment should be swift and brutal.
Oh, the execution chariot should have been called immediately.
Right. The guards should be dragging them out to the courtyard right then and there.
Retributive justice demands their immediate death. But what they receive instead shatters every human expectation. Let's look at verse 21.
Okay.
It mentions these wagons being given to the brothers. The Hebrew word used here is agala, which refers to a vehicle with heavy, round wheels.
And we need to be very clear about the historical reality of this item.
Yeah, these are not basic wheelbarrows. They are not little agricultural carts that a farmer pushes around to move dirt.
Right, because if we look closely at the Middle Kingdom period of Egyptian history,
Specifically the 12th dynasty.
yeah, the 12th dynasty, we see a totally different picture. The wheeled wagon was a highly restricted, state-sponsored technological asset.
The technology of the wheel was still relatively scarce back then.
Yeah.
And it was immensely valuable.
So these vehicles belonged exclusively to the monarchy.
Yes, they were heavily guarded, maintained by state funds, and used specifically for royal logistics and elite military movement?
So you could not buy one.
No, and you certainly could not rent one.
I'm trying to picture the modern equivalent of this.
It's hard to wrap your mind around.
It is. It is almost like sitting on death row in a maximum security prison.
Hmm.
You have committed high treason, you have confessed to the crime, and you are just waiting for the warden to walk down the hall and announce it is time for the firing squad.
Right.
But instead of the warden, the door swings open, and it is the president's Secret Service.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they do not put you in handcuffs. They look at you and say, your jet is ready, and they escort you out to Air Force One.
That is a great analogy.
Is that really the scale we are talking about here? Because if it is, I am trying to figure out how this makes any logical sense.
It is absolutely that scale.
Because if I'm an Egyptian guard watching this happen, I am thinking, these guys are foreign criminals. They are wandering shepherds from Canaan. Why are they getting the royal treatment?
It feels like this makes justice look cheap, doesn't it?
Yeah. Why would a sovereign ruler reward criminals with state property?
Well, that tension is the whole point of the passage. The guards watching this would have been utterly baffled.
I bet.
I mean, you could not even touch one of these wagons without the direct, explicit decree of Pharaoh himself. There were checkpoints between Egypt and Canaan.
So they would get stopped.
Oh, constantly. When these wagons rolled up to the border, the sentries would inspect the wheels, see the royal insignia, and know that whoever was driving them had the full backing of the Egyptian crown. So when Joseph dispatches these royal wagons to the land of Canaan, it is a geopolitical statement of immense magnitude.
And to answer my question about justice looking cheap,
Right. This action puts on full display the doctrine of unconditional election and irresistible grace.
which is huge.
Huge. The brothers did absolutely zero to merit these wagons. They brought no righteousness to the table.
They brought only their guilt.
Their guilt, their past deceit, and their empty hands. Salvation in this text originates entirely from the throne.
The provision is given, not earned.
Yes, the sovereign ruler acts independently of the subject's worthiness. God does not look for a spark of goodness in them. He imposes his own goodness upon them.
So they receive the king's wagons instead of the king's wrath.
That is a good way to put it.
The wagons get the brothers moving, but how the text describes this movement reveals even more about the nature of this unearned favor.
Because it is not just about the items themselves.
Right. The source material points out that the grammar of the text here tells a theological story all on its own.
It mentions a specific grammatical construction called the vav consecutive.
Now, for someone who has no idea how biblical Hebrew functions, what does that grammatical flow actually look like in practice? Like, how does a verb sequence tell a story about grace?
Okay, so in biblical Hebrew, a vav consecutive is a syntax structure that drives a historical narrative forward with an unstoppable sequential momentum.
Oh,
You can think of it like a chain reaction. The text repeats a specific pattern over and over. Joseph gave, and then he gave, and then he gave.
so it is a continuous unidirectional flow.
Well, spot on. From the sovereign ruler to the desperate subjects. It only goes one way.
And this highlights the theological concept of monergism, right?
Yes. Monergism means that one party does all the acting, all the saving, and all the providing.
So the brothers are completely passive recipients of this lavish grace.
Completely. They are not negotiating a treaty. They're not offering to work off their debt in exchange for the wagons.
They are just the empty vessels being filled by a sovereign decree. Okay, let me make sure I'm following the mechanism here. If monergism means it is a completely one-way street, does that mean the brothers are just mindless robots in this scenario?
No, not at all.
Because verse 21 also says, and the children of Israel did so. They take the wagons, they physically pack up and go, they clearly take action.
Right.
So how does the source material reconcile the idea that God does all the providing, but the men still have to do the acting?
That is a vital distinction to make. Unearned favor produces immediate action and obedience.
Ah,
The grace is the catalyst. They do not earn the grace by obeying. The grace compels them and equips them to obey.
so Joseph commands them to go get their father, and the wagons are the tangible grace that makes fulfilling that command possible.
Yes, they act, but their action is entirely dependent on the provision they just received. They could not have made the trip without the royal transport.
Which brings us to the next item on this ancient inventory list, the clothes.
The clothes are fascinating.
Yeah. Joseph gives them changes of raiment. The Hebrew phrase here is chalaphoth simaloth. Now, on the surface, giving someone clothes seems like a nice gesture.
Yeah.
But they have royal wagons. Why bother with clothes? Why not just load the wagons with extra food, maybe some water for the desert, and send them on their way?
Because in the culture of the ancient Near East, clothing carried immense weight. It was never just about staying warm or covering up.
What was it about?
Receiving a garment from a ruler was a deeply significant official transaction. It conferred official favor.
Okay.
It was a public symbol of forgiveness and reconciliation. It imparted a new, elevated status to the recipient.
So when a king gave you a garment from his own stores, he was publicly declaring that you were under his protection.
Yes, and that you were part of his favored household. Think about it. You could not show up to the land of Canaan driving the equivalent of Air Force One while looking like a starving, ragged peasant.
Oh, that makes sense. The visual disconnect would be far too jarring.
Right. The new garments matched their new status.
I have to point out a massive, striking irony here. The source material notes this, and it is impossible to ignore once you see it.
Go for it.
Years ago, in chapter 37, what did these exact same brothers do to Joseph? They violently stripped him of his special coat.
Yeah, they tore his beautifully ornamented garment from his body.
And then they took that garment, soaked it in the blood of an animal, and used it to deceive their grieving father, Jacob.
That blood-soaked tunic was the ultimate symbol of their hatred.
Their hatred, their betrayal, and their deceit. And now, Joseph, the man they stripped and left naked in a pit, covers their shame with royal Egyptian textiles.
He clothes the very men who stripped him.
The poetic reversal is just astonishing. I mean, I am trying to imagine the psychological weight of putting on that Egyptian linen, knowing what you did to the man who gave it to you.
Oh, the psychological impact on those brothers would have been overwhelming. Every time the fabric brushed against their skin, they would be reminded of their own guilt.
And his staggering mercy.
Yeah. What is so remarkable about this detail is how concrete it is. Forgiveness, in this biblical narrative, is not some abstract philosophical concept.
It is not a vague feeling of goodwill or a polite nod across a room.
No, it has hands, it has feet, it has a high cost, it has material reality. God does not deal in vague sentimentality.
It deals in concrete historical provision.
Exactly. The garments prove the pardon.
Yeah.
The brothers cannot deny they are forgiven because they are literally wearing the evidence of that forgiveness.
So everyone gets these beautiful royal Egyptian clothes, the shame is covered.
But the distribution of these items is far from equal.
Right, and this introduces a major point of friction into the narrative. Let's look at the specifics of verse 22.
Okay.
It says, Benjamin receives 5 changes of clothes and 300 pieces of silver. Now, before we even address the favoritism toward Benjamin, that silver is a very sharp callback to their crime.
Oh, it is a devastating callback. Joseph was originally sold into slavery by these men for 20 pieces of silver.
That was the going rate for a human life back then.
Yeah. Now, 300 pieces of silver are being freely poured out into the hands of Benjamin.
What was once the dark currency of betrayal has been radically changed.
Changed into the currency of lavish, unmeasured generosity.
But here is my issue with this, and I think it is a natural question for anyone reading this text.
What is that?
Favoritism is the exact thing that started this entire catastrophic family breakdown in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
Jacob favored Joseph. Jacob gave Joseph the special coat, and the older brothers burned with such murderous jealousy that they destroyed their family.
Right.
So why on earth would Joseph risk igniting that exact same jealousy by lavishing so much extra wealth on Benjamin?
It is a good question.
From a human perspective, this looks incredibly reckless. He is handing them the match that started the fire 20 years ago.
It does look like a highly dangerous move, but it functions as a deliberate, penetrating, moral mirror.
The mirror.
Yeah. Joseph is actively testing the condition of their hearts. He is recreating the scenario that caused their initial fall into treason.
Ugh. He wants to see if they will hate Benjamin the same way they hated him.
Will the sight of a favored younger brother drive them back to violence? Will they murmur against the sovereign's decision?
Will they complain that the distribution of wealth is unequal and unfair?
Precisely.
And what actually happens when they see Benjamin getting 5 times the clothing and a massive pile of silver?
The text is entirely silent on any complaint.
Wow.
There is no murmuring recorded. They accept the unequal distribution without a word of protest.
This proves that the unearned favor they just received has actually altered their internal nature.
A heart that has been truly humbled by unmerited mercy does not burn with envy when someone else receives a disproportionate blessing.
Because they know they deserve death.
Yeah. The fact that they are standing there breathing, wearing royal clothes, and getting ready to ride in royal wagons is a miracle.
When you know you deserve the executioner's sword, you do not complain that the guy next to you got a better seat at the banquet.
That is a great way to summarize it.
You know, the source material actually takes a sharp turn here and applies this ancient text to modern sociology.
Oh, interesting. Let's get into that.
Yeah, it uses this moment to dismantle a very modern egalitarian fallacy. We live in a cultural moment that demands total equality of outcome.
Right.
We have this ingrained idea that God must treat everyone identically in order to be considered fair or just. But the text forces us to recognize that distinguishing grace is a reality.
Yes. The sovereign has the absolute right to dispense specific, distinguishing blessings to whom he pleases.
He gives the wagons and the grace to all the brothers, but he gives Benjamin far more.
God's grace is not egalitarian. Because all humanity has fallen into treason against the Creator, God owes nothing to anyone.
Therefore, whatever he gives is an act of sheer unmerited mercy.
The older brothers are not in a position to audit the sovereign's ledgers. They cannot demand an accounting of why Benjamin got 300 pieces of silver.
They are simply grateful to be alive.
The sovereign chooses, the sovereign distributes, and the sovereign owes no human being an explanation for his generosity.
That is a really hard pill for our modern sensibilities to swallow. We want everything perfectly even.
We really do.
But when we grasp the depth of our own guilt, the envy has to die. You cannot be envious of another person's blessing when you are stunned by the fact that you have not been consumed by divine justice.
That's so true.
So the brothers are fully equipped. They have the wagons, the clothes, the silver. They are ready to roll.
But the ultimate target of this massive rescue mission is not the brothers standing in the halls of Egypt.
No, the target is the frail, grieving patriarch waiting back in the rocky hills of Canaan Jacob.
The father, who has spent over 2 decades mourning his son he firmly believed was torn apart by wild beasts.
He is old, he is starving, and he believes his family line is on the verge of extinction.
Let's detail the specific inventory sent directly to Jacob.
Okay, the text lists 10 male donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys carrying grain and bread for the travels.
That is 20 donkeys in total, forming a massive supply train solely dedicated to the father's needs.
The source material gives us another exegetical detail here from the original Hebrew.
Yeah.
The phrase good things of Egypt translates the Hebrew construct chain, mituv, mitzrayim. What does that linguistic construct actually signify? Like, break that down so a layman can understand why that matters.
Sure. Syntactically, this is called a partitive genitive. In everyday terms, it means Jacob is not just getting the leftover scraps from the Egyptian pantry.
Okay.
He is receiving a portion of the absolute cream of the crop. The Hebrew word tuv means the best, the fatness, the absolute highest quality available in the land.
So Pharaoh did not just send generic grain.
No, he sent the finest resources, the luxury goods, the premium supply of the most formidable empire on earth.
Wow.
And this highlights a critical theological doctrine, the providence of means.
The providence of means.
Yeah, God ordains the final destination, absolutely.
Yeah.
He decreed from eternity past that Jacob's family would survive the famine and relocate to Egypt. But God also ordains the ordinary means to get them to that destination. He supplies the physical bread, the literal animals, and the wooden wheels for the path.
So he does not just give a mystical decree from heaven saying, be in Egypt and expect them to magically teleport there.
Yeah.
He provides the actual physical wheels to roll on.
Precisely. This text thoroughly rejects a very lazy type of modern spirituality.
What do you mean by lazy spirituality?
Well, there are people who expect divine outcomes without utilizing any ordinary means. They think faith means ignoring practical reality, refusing medical treatment, or waiting for food to drop from the sky.
Oh, right.
But God's providence constantly utilizes the material world. The grain, the donkeys, and the wagons are the ordained physical instruments of God's preserving grace.
I want to frame this against a very popular modern teaching. If you turn on a television on a Sunday morning, you will often hear prosperity theology.
Oh, yeah.
It claims that God's favor is proven by material wealth, by luxury, by acquiring the best things the world has to offer. But look at what happens in this text.
It's totally different.
The fat of Egypt, the premium supply of the empire, was not given so Jacob could build a bigger, more luxurious tent in Canaan.
No.
It was not given to improve his earthly portfolio so he could retire comfortably in the famine-struck land. It was given strictly to bring him safely into the sovereign's presence in Egypt.
Yes.
The wealth of the world is commandeered here to sustain the church in her earthly migration, not to provide temporal luxury for us to sit back and enjoy.
That is a crucial distinction to make. The supplies are entirely provisional. They're fuel for the road.
The goal of the wagons and the donkeys is the reunion with the exalted Son.
Exactly. If Jacob had just looked at the donkeys, decided he liked the wealth, and stayed in Canaan, he would have missed the entire purpose of the provision.
Right, the provision always points to the destination.
The grace we receive today, the food on our physical tables, the breath in our lungs, our income is not the end goal. It is the supply for our pilgrimage.
Now, this ancient historical event does not stand alone. As we transition our focus, we need to look at how this narrative points directly to the center of all redemptive history.
This is where the source material gets incredibly vivid, drawing out what theologians call typology.
Typology, right. We are looking at Joseph as a real historical figure in antiquity, but also as a shadow pointing forward to a much greater reality.
The parallels between Joseph and Jesus Christ are staggering once you begin to map them out.
They really are.
Both are the uniquely beloved sons of their fathers. Both are violently rejected by their own brethren.
Both descend into a pit.
Yeah, Joseph into the literal dry cistern in the desert, and Christ into the grave.
Both are falsely accused by the surrounding culture.
And both are highly exalted from the place of suffering to the right hand of the supreme throne.
And here is the climax of that parallel, the thing that ties this entire narrative together. Both are made the sole source of life for the very people who wronged them.
That is so true.
The brothers who betrayed Joseph have to come crawling back to Joseph for the bread they need to survive. The sinners who crucified Christ must come to Christ for the grace they need to live.
We are those treacherous brothers.
Yeah, we stand before the throne completely guilty, expecting wrath. But the greater Joseph, Jesus Christ, looks at us and provides the wagons of salvation.
The revelation of the exalted brother changes the entire landscape of human history. The men expecting a sword receive a savior.
The source material brings in some very strong applications here, explicitly confronting several modern errors regarding how humanity seeks reconciliation and salvation.
Yeah, the sources argue heavily against pluralism.
And just to clarify, pluralism is the idea that man is inherently good by nature, that all paths lead to God, and that humanity can somehow reach glory on its own 2 feet without needing a specific king's provision.
The text demonstrates the exact opposite. Man is utterly dependent and morally bankrupt.
Jacob's family is dying in a severe famine. They cannot manufacture their own salvation.
No, they cannot grow crops in dead soil. They desperately need the external provision of the sovereign. If human nature were sufficient to save itself, the royal wagons would be completely unnecessary.
The source material also argues against secular sociological frameworks. It points specifically to ideologies like Marxism or critical race theory.
Right. Frameworks which attempt to divide people based on worldly grievances and power dynamics.
The argument made in the sources is that the brothers had massive, legitimate historical grievances. They had a history of hatred, jealousy, and extreme violence.
They were the ultimate broken family.
Yeah, but how is that deep historical division actually healed? The source argues it is not healed by secular sociology or dividing people into oppressed and oppressor categories.
No, true reconciliation like the reconciliation of these brothers happens solely at the throne of grace.
It is the unearned mercy of the ruler that unites them and strips away their former animosity.
Worldly frameworks can only manage grievances, they cannot cure them.
And finally, the sources reject what they call seeker-sensitive gimmicks in modern religion.
Oh, they argue strongly against relying on smoke machines, laser lights, or psychological manipulation to draw a crowd or manufacture an emotional experience.
The text argues that the ironclad truth of God's word and the reality of his grace is the only transport the church needs.
We do not need superficial additions when we have the king's royal wagons. Christ provides the ultimate perfect provision.
The historical garments given to the brothers in Egypt were beautiful, but they were physical fabric.
Yeah, they eventually faded, tore, and turned to dust.
Christ provides the imputed righteousness of his own active and passive obedience.
Yes.
Let's break that down, because active and passive obedience is a heavy theological phrase. What is the mechanism there? Like, how does Christ's obedience become our garment?
It is the core of the gospel. Christ's active obedience refers to the fact that he lived a perfect, sinless life.
Okay.
He perfectly kept every single demand of God's holy law that we fail to keep every day.
And what about the passive obedience?
His passive obedience refers to his willingness to suffer and bear the full penalty of the law on the cross. He took the executioner's sword that we deserved. Wow. When we are united to him by faith, his perfect record is imputed or legally credited to our account. That is the garment that covers our absolute shame.
So it is not Egyptian linen. It is the flawless righteousness of Christ himself.
And it is not Egyptian grain. It is the gospel.
That is the true bread from heaven that sustains the believer on the long, difficult path home.
You know, this has been a massive shift in perspective for me.
Oh, for sure.
What started out looking like a boring, ancient inventory list of carts and clothes has opened up into an awe-inspiring reality.
It really has.
Genesis 45 shows us that our immense guilt and our treason are met not with the sword, but with the king's lavish, unearned provision.
He ensures that his chosen people will make it all the way home, no matter how harsh the famine gets.
The sovereign commands the final destination, and the sovereign supplies the wheels to get us there.
That is it in a nutshell. I want to leave you, the listener, with a striking image drawn from the 19th century preacher Charles Spurgeon. I want you to mull this over on your own because it builds on everything we have discussed today about transport and provision.
It's a brilliant thought.
Spurgeon said that for the believer, death itself is nothing but a royal vehicle sent by the king to bring his people safely to his palace.
Wow.
We spend our whole lives terrified of the end. But when you face your darkest hour, when the world seems entirely bleak and the famine is closing in, what if the thing that looks like the absolute end is actually just the king's transport arriving to carry you home?
Think about that.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.